Welcome to Show Money, the only show exclusively dedicated to the business of mixed martial arts. I'm Paul Gift, the economist, and with me as always are Jason Cruz, our lawyer, and John Nash, the man who knows everyone and everything in MMA. There's one main thing we're going to talk about today, maybe another if we have time, but that would be MMAAA, or if you're mathy, M squared A cubed. Or the one that everyone's doing, MMAAA, which is Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association. I wanted to say Fighters Association. And so they had their, introductory press conference, I guess, if we can call it that, yesterday. And they announced that they're active and they have a board of Tim Kennedy, Donald Cerrone, TJ Dillashaw, Cain Velasquez, GSP. And then they're joined by their advisor, Bjorn Rebney. And so, guys, we're going to start with first impressions. Just what you thought of the press conference, and then we'll get into details about why. And we'll start with you, Jason. What was your first impression?
Well, it's hard not to be a little cynical about this new association. First of all, I when I heard the name, I thought that, they really got to work on that acronym. That's really hard to figure out. Secondly, I think that it's hard not to think that there's something underlying the whole issue. The fact of the matter is, from my understanding, it's basically dealing with the UFC. And one of the things that kind of popped up in my head is that they brought up, that WMEIMG purchased the UFC for, up to $4 billion, whatever it might be. And you think, and that most of those fighters, 4 of the 5 fighters, are represented by CAA. And if you peel it back a little bit more, you feel like, I think John has been talking about, there is that rivalry between the two Hollywood power brokers, WMEIMG and CAA. And it's hard for me not to think that this is their rivalry seeping over into the world of MMA, because one of the things that I was interested in hearing from yesterday was whether or not this would cover fighters in Bellator, fighters in World Series of Fighting, things of that nature, especially when Bjorn Rebney's name is attached. Would he be working to work with Bellator fighters? And if he could even do that, I'm not sure. I understand he's just an advisor, but then again, what are the parameters of that? So that is really my first impressions. Whether or not it works, I am not wholeheartedly behind whether or not it would work. It seems to me very much driven by others than just the fighters.
Not wholeheartedly behind it. All right, John, over to you. I said on Twitter that I was underwhelmed, and John, you had a phrase there as well.
Well, I thought it was absurd, but I'll get into the reason I thought absurd. First, there was some things that were great. I didn't actually listen to the press conference. I was working during the time, and I came in. The good thing is it went so long that when I finally got a break from work, it was still going an hour into it or something. So the good thing is they have a great collection of fighters. Those are some really, people always say, oh, you need big names and you need, current stars in the UFCs. And this is a pretty strong group of former champions, and all of them, GSP is one of the greatest draws in UFC history, and he plans on making a comeback, so he's still a very big draw. And the other guys are very relevant. They might not hold the belts right now, but all of them are serious contenders in their weight classes. So you have a great group of guys. All of them are very motivated, it seems. All are passionate. I've talked to a few of them, and I'll say if you talk to Tim Kennedy, there's a guy that really cares about fighters and is really serious about this and really informed. The part I found absurd is, there's just certain stuff. One is, people might make too big a deal about Bjorn Rebney. Oh, he's got a bad history of Bellator and stuff, and he does. He has a terrible reputation. He's very much disliked by a lot of fighters and managers. There's people that told me they would they'd love to get their hands on him if they could. So it doesn't seem quite fitting to have him as your main advisor, main spokesperson for this association that they're putting together. That's not to say he can't do a good job. He knows the business, so he might be, someone you might want on your side that knows how the business works and how malicious the business can be, because he was on the other side before. But still, that's not a great PR move. And then you throw on the top of it that 4 of the 5 fighters are all managed by CAA. And that gets a little weird too, because this is where it starts getting absurd. A fighters association, any sort of labor organization, you would want it to be a democratic process that the fighters elect the leadership. Well, these are fighters leading the movement, but it doesn't seem like there was many members yet to choose this leadership. These seem to be people. Are these guys going to be the actual leadership? Are they going to remain in these positions? Do they call the shots? In other words, has someone put these people in place? And which makes me suspicious is not of the fighters, but of maybe ulterior motives. Is this is not new. This is something I heard about 2 years ago. I remember actually asking Bjorn Rebney about it, and he said he'll call me back, and I'm still waiting for that phone call. But and I asked other people. Tim Donaher used to work at Bellator, and his response was no comment, and then followed by but it wouldn't be a bad thing, would it? This was 2 years ago. These stories were going out that and there's Josh Grosh was another guy that heard of, and we've talked about it one time over lunch, that Bjorn Rebney and CAA were trying to put together a fighters association. What was interesting about these rumors too is very few people heard them, so it seems like it was limited to CAA and Bjorn Rebney. So that's my question. Is this truly organized for the fighters, or is there ulterior motives on some people involved to have much greater influence over this association than you would really want in a fighters association? That's why I called it absurd.
Well, so let me ask you something on that. So I think a lot of people, when they think of CAA involved in this, they think that it's CAA wanting to attack WME IMG, like bringing your battle in one business to basically another field. But you're saying CAA's been behind this for 2 years. So
yeah,
what do you think there? Go ahead. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, people are saying this is CAA's counter move because they took over the UFC. WME took over the UFC, bought the UFC, and maybe that was the impotence to actually get to actually do it. But this is something that guys were talking about 2 years ago. I know that for a fact, that people were talking about this 2 years ago. So it doesn't seem like the William Morris purchase of UFC was the impetus to do it. This was something discussed, again, 2 years, over a year before, actually 2 years before William Morris bought the UFC.
But I think it's fortuitous that it was CAA, that it was WME-IMG that purchased the UFC. I think it's just very odd. But anyway, go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say my issue with it was that I was expecting a union, and I think from our last conversation that I think a union would be a better way to go in an association. I know that John, you think competition is the best thing, and I think competition is the best thing too. I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon in terms of opening up the promoters, really. Like with the Ali Act, that it's not going to pass and not be that effective. But so I was expecting a union and didn't get the union, and got the phrase that they don't want to do a union. But then it felt to me almost, I don't know how to describe it except Trumpian, kind of Trumpian a little bit, and that they're just saying all this crazy stuff that just didn't seem to make sense. So like, we're not doing a union, we're going to start an association. And we're going to get revenues up to 50%. Yeah, that sounds great. Just say crazy stuff and try to get people on your side. Or we're going to strike. We're going to have an association of independent contractors. We're going to strike. Yeah, strike. Right? It just did not feel right. And then you throw in the revenue stuff and it took it over the top for me. I don't know about you guys. What do you think? Did it seem crazy or not? Like some of the things, it just did not make sense.
I think one of the things that I believe it was Liz Mullen of the Sports Business Journal asked is that all of those fighters are contracted under the UFC, but what would make the UFC want to listen to this MMAAA? I mean, what can drive MMAAA for the UFC to listen to them and make changes? I mean, I know pie in the sky they want 50%, but how are they going to implement that? Yesterday you didn't hear that. You didn't hear what are the strategies, and I understand that Rebney was very coy about that, and maybe doing so because there's something that's down the pike that he doesn't want to tip off. But in the same light, I'm not quite sure how are they going to make the UFC bring up pay, bring up pension, help fighters that have retired. How are they going to do that? It doesn't make sense to me. I know the UFC put out some sort of bland statement about welcoming other viewpoints, whatever, but I don't know outside of the inference of a labor strike, but that can make the UFC listen.
Yeah, it was a little, I mean, it left a lot of, I mean, there was a lot of fighters asking questions. I don't know if you guys saw that. A lot of fighters were saying it didn't really answer much. If you look at it, the PFA model is understandable. They want to make a union and basically use the tools of a union, strike, to force the UFC to collectively bargain. That's that's their strategy. We're going to make a union, use the ability of a union to organize and strike if we have to, and collectively bargain. That's their tool. MMAAA, they have their strategy too, and it's pretty obvious. Their strategy is to basically weaken contracts enough and open up the market enough that competition will come about, and competition will drive up wages. That's their strategy. Both are tried and true strategies. Both work. We've seen example after example in pro sports how those two work. The MMAAA, whatever the hell it is, god damn, okay, that's the worst thing. The first is you guys have the worst name of all of them. That's all I'm going to say. But their strategy wasn't clear cut. They're gonna strike, but we're going to be an association. Then they said, well, we're not really going to strike. What about the antitrust? They go, well, we don't want the lawyers to get a third of that. And so I started thinking, and they go, I think what they're going to do is, this is a strategy that if you listen to Rob Macy and the MMAAA guys talk about, and if you read about the NFLPA, they're basically stealing from them, but maybe cut it off. Is I think they use they settle on antitrust. They say, we can sue you too, negotiate with us and make a settlement, and we can cut a CBA or a deal with the UFC, so you're not sued, because as soon as we make a CBA, you can't be sued anymore. In other words, they're going to use that as leverage to craft a CBA by basically giving the UFC the right to say we're not going to there will no longer be an antitrust violation. We can settle with that.
Yeah, but do you think the UFC cares? I know they're spending a lot of money on this, but as opposed to getting a union, I don't think that threat is, I mean, they're a $4.2 billion company, and what's the antitrust lawsuit costing them? 10 million, 20 million?
Yeah.
So I mean, do you think it's that big of a threat?
I don't know. Maybe they do or they don't. I'm just saying that's the tool that you can use. That's what the NFLPA did. So they're gonna. That's what I'm guessing is that they think is the threat. So basically say, hey, you guys can settle for less money than it would take to pay them and their lawyers, and we'll take for less, and we'll make an agreement on that.
And when we were talking about the PFA, we were like, do we think they'll get up to with the union? Do they think they'll get to 50% revenues? And what do we go to? Maybe like 20% or something like that with the union. I think. Remember that conversation?
Yeah. It's well, again, they could settle a price, and then next thing, if you can't check their books, you don't know what the percentage you're getting. Yeah, we'll give you 25%. Oh, the TV deal was the TV deal was $500 million. You didn't tell us about $200 million. That's not there. So it's really, so there's a lot of without proper, without the right leverage, you can't get much out of it. I mean, the other thing is and this is rumors floating around, and I don't know if this is true, but there's plenty of rumors that the group that came out yesterday, that there's talk that a promotion could be in the works, a fighter-controlled, fighter-run promotion, which they would have equity in. Who knows if that's true, but there's rumors floating around on that.
What do you think about that, Jason?
Well, I think that would definitely secure a lawsuit on the part of the UFC to stop any kind of fighters from starting their own league. Definitely the fact that a breach of contract is the immediate thing that comes to mind, is that these guys have signed fight deals, and even if you have the Michael Jordan of sports law, as I think Rebney called Jim Quinn, they could find a lot. I mean, the UFC could find a lot of Jordan stoppers. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think threat of a lawsuit really scares the UFC or WMEIMG, and the fact of the matter is that Rebney kept inferring about a settlement. Well, what precipitates a settlement? The threat of litigation, and so here he is at the press conference talking about, hey, we're not going to do the no antitrust lawsuit because that take you 33% of that is, he's a lawyer too, of course, revenue. It's like 33% of that is going to be going to the lawyers, and it's going to take a long time. Well, what do you think is going to happen with their negotiations? I mean, the UFC is going to initially tell them to pound sand, and nothing's going to happen for X amount of time. And again, it goes back to, well, what is their leverage? What is MMAAA's double AAA? That's what I like. What's their leverage in making the UFC listen and come to the table? Because they're right at this point, the UFC will think it's nice that Cerrone and these guys are doing all these things, but in the end, they're going to come back to the UFC because they're under contract.
Yeah, I like throwing AAA in there too. By the way,
yeah,
AAA is what works for me. I don't know why, but yeah, it felt when you look back at the history of sports, these things take time. They don't happen immediately. It felt like again, I didn't hear it. I'm going off of what I read. It felt like there was this lack of appreciation for the long term, for how long some of this stuff might take. Correct me if I'm wrong, because some of you guys listen to it. But, we don't want a union. That might take, 4 or 5 years or something like that. But, I mean, look at the history of sports with athletes who were way, in my opinion, with the reserve clause, way more exploited than UFC fighters. But, I mean, these things took a long, long time, and you can't rush it.
Yeah, well, no, you can. We want everything now. Now, give me now.
Yeah. They're millennials.
I can understand I mean, it's a great sales pitch to fighters, because for fighters, it's not like they can wait 5 years. They want something now, because otherwise it's useless to them. 5 years, their career's over, and they've got traumatic brain injury and very little money in the bank account and no pension. So I can understand for fighters, you want to sell them, we're going to fix it now. So that makes sense. I mean, the other, like I said, what can they offer for settlement to the UFC? They can offer something cheaper than what they're getting sued. I mean, let's say down the line, the pipe, that the lawsuit continues and it starts looking good for the plaintiffs. Well, guess what? Now they have something to offer the UFC. We'll settle for less. Just make a deal with us. So the other possibility too, if it doesn't get class certified, they have a whole group of fighters now in that association that they could file a mass tort with.
Right.
So that gives them another potential there. So that gives them something to do. I don't know if it helps, fighters, because now you have two different groups fighting over basically saying who can be cheaper than the other group to get a deal.
Exactly. I think that's harsh. And I think one of the things that I think you pointed out, John, is that the traumatic brain injury issue is out there. I know that Jordan Parsons was the first guy to be diagnosed with TBI, and to some extent it's been successful with the NFL. I know the WWE is dealing with that, and I'm certain that this is something that they are looking forward to. And again, several of the fighters yesterday were talking about how people are not the same after certain years fighting. They're broken down, things of that nature. So there is that inference that it could go down that road regarding mass tort.
Yeah. Well, the one thing, though, I think that UFC is safe on, one is that a lot of the injuries take place in practice, and they don't have any, that you're an independent contractor, so they can say how much of the damage was done in the fight, how much was done, sparring. The other thing is all the bouts are sanctioned by the states. So basically the states are implicit in the damage done to the fighters. So I think that's what makes a CTE lawsuit against the UFC so much weaker than against other leagues. The other leagues, they had the practice. They're the ones that ran practices. They did everything. They're the one that regulated the events, the sanction them and everything. They had their own leagues for it. They're culpable. The UFC is pushed culpability onto everybody else. I shouldn't say just the UFC, MMA. Yeah. The UFC is the one with all the money, so that's who you're going to sue. But MMA is.
You've got the state agent in the octagon deciding when the blows are going to stop. And I'll say, when you go to the ABC meetings, when you're around these regulators, man, they are just insanely concerned about damage. I mean, especially the lady from New Jersey, but that was a notch above. But I mean, anything that would possibly make the sport a little bit more risky, they are extremely concerned. I think they are concerned about lawsuits. It feels like down the line. But so, what do you guys think in terms of? So we've got 2 associations now. I mean, I think PFA is probably done. Maybe not, but I get the sense that they're done. But now we've got 2 associations, and at least one thing to come out of it. I mean, I think an association is better for fighters than nothing. I would have gone the union route, but now we've got 2 associations, and let's remove PFA for the moment. It seems like there's a better opportunity now. They might work together as opposed to PFA and MMAAA. But do you think they'll merge together? Or do you think they'll just work together in conjunction? How do you think these 2 are gonna get along with each other? What's your sense, or what do you suspect?
Jace, you're first.
You know, it will be hard simply because there will have to be a meeting of the minds as to the direction of the association. I think that while both sides probably will be amicable toward each other as being supportive of the overarching goal, but the issue will be what is the strategies and tactics to get to that goal, and what are we focusing on? I mean, you guys correct me, but like MMAFA is more geared toward all fighters, you know, not just the UFC. Whereas definitely sounds like MMAAA is geared toward UFC, strictly toward UFC. And there's that. I mean, I do have the feeling that like there is underlying issues going on with the new association MMAAA. So that would be something that the 2 organizations would hash out. Maybe if it gets closer to bargaining, that the two associations would come together to work in negotiating with the UFC and maybe down the line Bellator or whatever.
John, what do you think?
I think it'll be a death match. I think I doubt though. At least they're not going to work together right away because you didn't see those fighters joining the MMAFA to basically run for position and be the heads of the MMAFA. They opened up a whole new association with Bjorn Rebney as an advisor and all of them already in place on a board. So I mean, it seems like their intent is not to work with the MMAFA. So that would make it seem like right there would tell me that there's not going to be coming together immediately. In the future, though, who knows? Maybe, you know, the weight, you never know what the reaction to the fighters, the weight, what happens. There might be a meeting of the mind. I think if they do have a meeting of the mind and some sort of, maybe in the future they say, okay, this can only work if we work together, and we have to make some, you know, we have to have maybe a new round of votes to see who's going to be on the board, run it, and, you know, something like that. So, but for now, no. I mean, it's obvious that they're, you know, I mean, they launched an association because they didn't want to work with the MMAFA.
Right. Does Rebney train anything? Do you know, or did he train? So we know Maisie used to train, so we could see that.
Yeah. No, I think Rebney would kill Macy.
Rebney was a fighter. I mean, a football player or something like that.
Rebney's a big guy, and he's, you know, Macy's got a bad back, and it's not a. It's a guy with bad shoulders.
Jiu-jitsu is made to take out the big guy, even if you have a bad back.
Yeah, but I think Rebney trained jiu-jitsu too, and he's done some combat sports training. Rebney's not, you know, he's supposedly a very fit guy in his age, and, you know, so I would pick, you know, Rebney. Rebney would probably beat the crap out of Dana White.
Really?
Although I remember, just to segue, remember when Frank Shamrock challenged the UFC to have Dana White fight Scott Coker for the rights for him to be in the UFC? Who knew what would have happened then? He was very confident, Coker, back then. I'm
still waiting for Tito Ortiz to fight Dana White in a boxing match. Whatever happened to that?
Yeah,
that was supposed to happen.
That'll be, I guess. Also, do you guys notice? I mean, there was a bunch of questions thrown at him that weren't really answered, like who's financing it, and apparently they have backing and financing it. And so there's questions on that. And my question to that is, how much financing do you need for an association? What's the purpose of the financing? What do you know? Who puts money into an association? What do you expect in return? So that's questions I had. There's a bunch. I mean, the thing left me with a lot of questions. And again, the absurdity to me is, as a guy that loves labor, and I'm probably the most pro-union guy in MMA, pro-union labor guy. The absurdity to me is when you all labor organizations is you generally, the rule, speaking to labor organizers, I've spoke to a bunch, is you don't elect officials until you have a big enough body to make the officials count. And that's the thing that really threw me off, is that they basically had these. maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe they misidentified them, and I should apologize if that's the case. But it sounded like they were saying these are the guys that are the head of the union right now, or the association right now.
Right, I agree with you. That's the sense in which it felt like marketing a little bit. That you need those big names. I guess you don't have to say they're part of the board. You could just say they're part of the association, and so I guess you could still market it with them without having them on the board, like you say, and then say we'll vote for a board later. Right. But yeah, I mean, the financing is one of the biggest things because people you don't do this. It's highly unlikely you're doing it out of the goodness of your own heart. And you just wonder, I looked up MMAA's California registration last night. Their original business address was a shared office facility in Newport Beach.
MacArthur Boulevard.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. It was like, and they've been around since 2015, October, something like that. Yeah, I looked that up.
Yeah, but that was super cheap. It was like $25 a day, or there was something where you could do $75 a month. So for funding, that wouldn't take a lot. But I guess if they have an office in Anaheim Hills now, there is some funding involved, and you have to travel.
Well, Anaheim Hills is not Newport Beach. I mean, if you were in the SoCal, you know that Anaheim Hills is not near.
No, what I was saying is if you have an official office now, that's a lot more expensive. But yeah, who does that? It makes you wonder if this is about attacking the UFC or WME IMG, or if the true motivation is for the fighters. And while helping the fighters may also hurt the others, it feels a little bit like you wondered a little bit with PFA and Boris, are the true motivations there? And it just makes you wonder if there's gonna be problems down the line, if the main people involved don't have the proper motivations. It just makes you second guess things, at least me.
Yeah, and then there's always a chance too. People can have ulterior motives that are that align with your interests, so that you could be working with someone that's investing in you. It's like, well, really their interests align with us because let's just say someone wants to make an MMA promotion. It kind of aligns with the fighters in the sense that we want more competition out there. I'll get a second. I'll backtrack in a second, but the idea would be like, they're going to make another promotion. So we're going to have more competition. It's going to raise our wages, and they need access to fighters. They want to help us, have leverage to get out of contracts. Okay. That makes some sense. Of course, then you get in the field where, if you have another promotion, there's kind of a conflict of interest because your association is dealing with the promotion, and that means all the other promotions are at odds with, are cut out of the deal that you're making with this other promotion. So that opens up another can of worms. But there's certain things. Maybe they have an endorsement deal. Maybe that logo that they came up with, the 2M3A with the fist, maybe some T-shirt company gave them a ton of money, and they're going to brand and sell the hell out of that thing. That's a possibility too.
Wait, let me look at this fist.
Maybe Silver Star can. Did you find it?
Find out where Tom Atencio was yesterday.
I just made my thing interviewing people about how they came up in the business is going to be called Combat Creators, and its logo has a fist too. Oh crap! Are they using a similar fist to mine? We have a similar fist.
That fist is taken from, from old communist posters.
That's what I thought. Like they should be hanging a sickle.
You can buy it online for like $8.
Solidarity, comrade. No, that's
So one of the things that I just want to bring up, he indicated that they are a 501c6, which is a business league that relates to, I believe, lobbying activity. So the NFL was one, but I think they denounced their standing. But what I'm trying to get to is, at some point, they have to reveal in their application how much money they have, what's their funding, all that other stuff. So at some point, somebody will be able to obtain that information, assuming that we could get a hold of it from the IRS. So it'll come to surface at some point. It'll be interesting to see who is assisting the MMAAA. I assume, though, that at least a portion of it is through GSP. I don't know him, and it'll be maybe this is one of those things that he wants to leave the sport with. Maybe just so pissed off at the UFC and Dana White that he wants to, trying to get back at him in some sort of way.
Maybe. No, I don't know the remote. I mean, I think I think there is some, he has an interest in maybe making the sport better than when he came in. There is obviously, I mean, if you talk to fighters, people, that there's been a lot of low-grade frustration and anger and stuff building for years, and it just seems like everything is building on top of the other things. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, the frustration spilling over from the UFC. So, that's.
What about Bjorn Rebney? What do you make of him? I mean, in a way, you can make an argument that it feels kind of like that. What's that guy from the drug company? That Martin Shkreli guy. All of a sudden saying, a few years later, I want to become a consumer advocate. I mean, like, is it? I mean, that's obviously an extreme example. Mm-hmm. But does that just?
Yeah, well, I personally think Rebney is overly vilified. I mean, in the sense that there's a lot of promoters that do terrible things. That's part of the MMA game, that there's terrible promoters. I mean, he was particularly famous because he was particularly, harsh and had stringent contracts and all this stuff. But I mean, how much of it that's the way he tried to compete? Sometimes you're forced to do stuff that's a little disgusting if you're trying to stay afloat, and there might have been a lot of pressure on him. But at the same time, I don't buy the whole thing like, I went on the razor's edge journey around the world up to Nepal, and I found spirituality and I came back to make amends, because again, we knew, back then we found out he was working on this stuff right after he got, let go from Bellator. So it's like, it wasn't like he woke up the next day like, damn, I really have to make a life change because I was not doing, I doubt that. This was, they started working on this right after Bellator. In fact, he said it, he's been working on it for 2 years. If his motives are not to make any money and stuff, I mean, you can't help but ask, what are your motives then? What's your intent? Is it, maybe he has no intent to make money. Maybe his whole intent is, damn it, I just don't like the UFC and I want to make as much trouble as possible for him.
This is his penance for past misdeeds. I don't know.
It could be to keep his name out there too. You have to stay relevant in the sport a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much personal money he's investing in this either. But
how is he making money? That's the other thing. Does he got a side job, or I mean, did he? He hasn't been making money for 2 years, allegedly. So
he got money from his buyout from Bellator.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
He has some sizable amount of money, and Bellator's purchase price skyrocketed after Strikeforce was bought, so he was a winner in that. So he probably made a few million there. He had some money, but he's
had some money in the bank, piggy bank there.
Yeah, and he's looking at something. He's getting back into MMA. He knows the business. I mean, again, I don't. This is not concrete, but there's a lot of rumors that they're going to start a promotion, and if they're starting, I mean, Bjorn Rebney's a promoter. He's not a labor organizer. It makes sense that there's rumors that they're going to start a promotion, because now you can put Bjorn Rebney as the head of the promoter, and he's got guys floating around that like there's Ken Pavia, people are saying, are floating around working on stuff. Well, Ken Pavia, you got a matchmaker now, so that's I wouldn't doubt that happens. The
problem is, do you not the problem, but do you think he can start and run a promotion now? It feels like he might be kind of painting himself into the corner with things he can do, and like. You're talking about 50% revenues. Well, he'll say, I guess, at Bellator, he got up to 53%. That was another thing that made me laugh. It's like, okay, you have to pay fighters decent wages and you're not making any money, so it's easy to do 53%.
Yeah. My promotion then brings in $20. I give 190% to my fighters. So,
right.
That doesn't, tell us what the totals are.
Right. But do you think he's kind of painting himself in the corner as the things he could do with his if there is a new promotion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, what would he paint himself in the corner? He has possibly he could paint him. He could use that as leverage. He could first of all, if he made a new promotion, none of the fighters would suddenly flock to that promotion. They're under contract, right? The promotion would have name value because it's attached to this organization, or the goodwill based on that, GSP and Cain Velasquez have a share in it or something. It's run by the fighters. That's the benefit they would have. But you could fold that or turn it into a minor league or whatever. As soon as if you struck a deal with the UFC, that could be part of the deal. Hey, we'll turn it into a minor league. Let's just, let's a place for up and coming fighters. It won't be competition. Let's make a settlement on the. Let's make a 50% CBA, and you won't have to worry about this other promotion.
All right, guys. So, are there any other big issues you want to say on this? So I want to get kind of our predictions, of course. We usually always end with predictions, but any other big issue that you wanted to talk about and on this topic?
For big predictions?
No. So yeah. So I want sort of your prediction of what's the outcome of this in terms of helping the fighters.
I think. Well, I would say, by the end of the year, we'll see something. MMAAA will do something. Can I just say Rebney and his? There'll be some sort of something will come out of it where they'll make an announcement or an action will be taken to take notice, because they can't just make this announcement and then just kind of go back into the and not be heard from. So something will happen. As far as my prediction on whether this will be successful, it's going to take much longer than what is predicted. There's this feeling that it's going to happen sooner than later, that it'll force the UFC's hands. I just don't think so. I think it'll take as long as, we could almost play the game of what will happen first, the antitrust trial or a settlement with MMAAA, or PFA gets enough signatures for an LRB election. We could almost go that way. So, to be honest with you, I do think MMAAA has the appeal of the brand name fighters, and it'll get some more people to talk. But obviously, there's a stigma there with Rebney and just the overarching concern about what's the purpose of it. So I just don't know if we will see MMAAA be the ones to create the association for the fighters in the UFC. It might be that they collaborate with someone else, but that's my prediction.
John, your big prediction for this?
My big prediction will have 3 or 4 other association unions spring up, at least, because it seems like we've gone through 5 in the last 2 years already.
It's a cottage industry.
It is. Everybody, especially since, they see the price and everything and how much money the UFC made. It's just like, oh, I got to get involved in that. I think it depends for the double M, triple A is, I guess the question for them is how much people can get past Bjorn Rebney being involved and the questions they have about CAA's involvement. If they can answer those 2 and they make the fighters happy, they might have some success and get a bunch of fighters together. My guess is, though, is in the long run, what happens is this group will eventually peter out like some of the other ones, and that's kind of my guess. They'll peter out. Eventually, though, maybe another year from now. That's hard to say. I think the big thing is it's almost like I feel like we're in a do or die moment where the fighters got to make up a decision and start working together and actually see momentum happening. Otherwise, with all the associations appearing and maybe over-promising and not delivering or falling apart, that they're just going to give up on the venture. That's the other option, I think, that would be my fear for a fighter. But my hope is eventually that this momentum continues and they actually settle on a structure, an organization, settle on a strategy and move forward with that. But who knows if that happens.
Right. All right. For me, yeah, I'm not terribly optimistic about this. We've seen in terms of sort of measurable, objective ways that we can show fighters are better off. I'm very pessimistic about this. We've had the MMAAA for how long? And while if you talk to Rob, and I like Rob a lot, he'll probably spew out some things that he says are better. But I don't think they've had any meaningful sort of objective impact on sort of fighter welfare. That's just my guess right now. And
I would disagree on one thing. I think this is the one thing people ignore, and one thing, talking to old time managers and stuff, it seemed obvious to me now in hindsight that the antitrust lawsuit had a big effect, maybe not a big effect, but had definitely an effect on the ability of fighters to test the market.
Damn you, John, you took my closing.
Oh, son of a bitch. I'll shut up.
No, but you have the ability to test the market. But I was like, the one thing that seems, what I was going to say is the one thing that seems to be happening is people aren't scared anymore. People are putting this, their wishes, their desires out there. There's more sort of media pressure, if we can call it that. There is that, and then there is the antitrust lawsuit that those elements are coming from them. While I don't think the associations themselves are going to sort of go out and directly get fighters higher pay, where a union may be able to, it seems like that's what's happening here from all of these. That it's not like there are no positives. I'm just not very high on the association going out there and meeting that anywhere close to 50% revenue metric or all the kind of things that they said. It seems like we're back to having another association where not much is going to happen. Although the tide seems to be changing, the culture seems to be changing a little bit out there.
That first of all, there's two. That 50% thing is absurd that fighters throw around with. One is there's two ways. You're never going to get a collectively bargain a 50% revenue stream with the UFC because as a union because you're a union dealing with basically would be a monopoly. UFC would be guaranteed a monopoly because now they have a CBA. They can. It's not like a league where in league sports you're forcing the teams to allow free agency to drive up prices. You could do work stoppages, but you could never get the type of money the other professional sports do by that. The same point is if you're going to go the other route and try to get as much free agency in the association route, well, there's no reason to cut a CBA, and give you 50% because it's based on the individual negotiations of each individual. It'd be more like baseball in that case, where there is no, cut split. So that's when people throw around that 50% all the time. Like it's never, ever going to get close to that. It's not, there's just no way. It just, the sport doesn't work that way. Some promoters might pay more than 50% if they have to. Look at boxing, but it's not, you're never going to have someone say, I'm going to give you 50% of my revenue in MMA. That was my rant. I got a rant in there. That was good.
The thing I'll add is that about the collective bargaining and getting rid of the ability to sue for antitrust is while the athletes no longer have that ability to sue, all the competitors still do, and it takes money. And you would probably need someone who's well financed. It would have to be someone like Viacom saying we're going to sue the UFC, but the competitors still have their full rights to do whatever they want to do. And the athlete story is, of course, that they're foreclosing competitors. So. And they're usually the ones who do sue. But so they talk about how the athletes lose the right to sue for being a monopoly, but the competitors still have them, although you need money to finance it.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the competitors could have less damages to sue for, less because they haven't been, they weren't around long enough to. With fighters, you have all these fighters, multiples of fighters, hundreds of fighters could claim they have damages. With the promotion, it's like, well, look at the track record of other promotions. You've only been around a couple of years. You went out of business. There's just not much financial return on that sort of lawsuit.
You're right. I don't know. That depends on your damages guy.
Yeah.
You can get a pretty creative damages guy in there.
That might be the next. Let's mark this off. We have something we can go pitch to people now. Take this out of the episode and we can go around and.
Anything you guys want to close with? I know we've got to get you out of here, Jason.
The one thing I wanted to also bring up is that with my prediction, I do think that maybe there's impetus with the new media rights deal and the new information that the UFC will be requesting $450 million a year. I definitely think that athletes are. Well, maybe more than the athletes are seeing it and jumping at the chance because there's more of this revenue stream that they foresee coming through to the UFC. And that will be another thing. I mean, obviously the once they even get there, there's going to be a fight over what's related to the revenue. Was it a TV contract? Is it the merchandise? Is it the attendance, pay-per-view? What all of that, and that's not even to the point. We're not even to that point yet. But I definitely think that there will be a push. Will it happen? I'm just like I said, not wholeheartedly supportive of what the groups are bringing.
My question would be too is if it's funny if anybody ever organized a CBA and got a revenue split with the fighters and the promoters UFC, how do you divvy up the payments to the individual fighters?
Yeah.
With team sports, it's like, well, that guy's worth more. He negotiated more as a QB. We need this. He's our number one QB. This is how much we pay number one QBs. You're still dealing with one organization. How do you go? Well, I'm this big a draw on this type of fighter. Thinking, well, we're still, we're going to pay the guy that's, Forrest Griffith that we love, and Chuck Liddell this kind of money. And you, who've been a pain in the ass, we're going to give you the lower tier pay.
We're gonna pay you CM Punk money.
Yeah, well, CM Punk money looked pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, no. I mean, actually, CM Punk money. Yeah,
the old Nate Diaz money. Remember the old Nate Diaz money? He wouldn't fight for it. That's the money you get.
Even though the rumors were, the rumors.
Well, he actually made more than that was listed, but he didn't make that much more.
Yeah.
I shouldn't give them. A lot of people know what he made, but yeah, he still was not great for main eventing championship matches and stuff. So, but yeah, that's I mean, I guess we all can just agree that we're very pessimistic as usual.
I was more optimistic with the PFA, honestly, but I mean, Boris was a little bit, it would have been nice to see someone other than an agent out there, but I don't know. I think I thought it was like, hey, it's the way to go. Who knows? Anyway, all right. You guys are all pessimistic. I'm optimistic. I love this sport.
That's why I love it. I'm a pessimist. It's like, I know someone's getting hurt. All right, I feel better. That's good.
All right, guys, are we done? Anything else we want to throw in there? Call it a day?
Just want to rub it in everybody's face about my article about Conor McGregor filing for a box. No, I'm just kidding. That's it. I still don't buy he's going to fight. I don't think he's going to use it, but I think that's the ploy. I just like rubbing in people's face. Okay, let's finish up.
Do we want the 2-minute version of what do you think it's going? It seems like a publicity stunt almost to me. I think it's like in a contract.
It's a publicity stunt, maybe a negotiating tool. He's putting the threat out there. They're like, oh, listen, here I might do that tactic of applying for a boxing license in a match and use the Ali Act, but I sincerely doubt it. He's going to do that. I think it's just a ploy to get renegotiate his contract. To tell you the truth, I think he has a good case to actually get a piece of equity in the UFC. Partly because UFC can't pay him what he deserves, because if they pay him that much, they won't meet their earning goals to get those dividend payments out. So they won't, to get those bonuses. So the only way you can meet those goals is we got to keep our EBITDA high, so we can't pay him too much. Well, give him a piece of the company.
Give stock options.
Yeah,
stock options. Yeah.
Get him a quarter point. It adds up. It's worth a lot. It's it's more than he would make fighting probably. You could say it's a quarter point of a $4 billion company, right? That's what, 10 million right there.
And the view back in the day was that stock options were free, pretty much. So I don't know if that view carries over today, but
I never got stock options for free. That's for sure.
No, the view of the company giving them is like,
yeah.
It used to be, it's free. It doesn't cost us anything.
Yep.
It used to be.
I think yesterday was just another sign to show the low bar that Conor McGregor has to deal with to create publicity. I mean, I don't know how much it is for a boxing license in California, but it was just kind of interesting to see with nothing in place that he could create such a stir. So it was interesting, and he's out till the birth of his first child. So he's out till May. So I check his Instagram. I'm sure he'll bring up stuff just to keep his name out there from here and there. So.
No, you guys you're a parent, right, Jason?
I am. I have two kids.
So you, knowing your experience, he might want to fight while his wife is expecting.
Oh well,
the hell out of town.
Yeah. Well, no. After the kid is born, because you don't want to wake up early in the middle of the night. So you want to go out. I got to train in Iceland. I mean, I can see him demanding to train in Iceland while his wife is in Ireland, because you don't want to deal with the feed the baby at 2 a.m. I mean, my goodness, that's worse. And the kid throws up on you, poos on you, all that other stuff. I mean, you'd much rather roll around with sweaty men than
Iceland might be too close. He might show up at AKA really far away, just like, oh yeah, I don't want to deal with that.
Well, he we don't know his contract, but he probably just got champions claused. So unless he's given the UFC a big cut of his Floyd Mayweather money, it's probably not happening anytime soon.
No, but I'm going to keep it alive because it's good clicks for us. So what the hell? Let's milk it.
Absolutely.
And as always, Floyd Mayweather wins in the end, and he didn't even have to do anything.
I know. I want to see Lomachenko Mayweather. All right, we're going to talk forever, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, guys. On behalf of John Nash and Jason Cruz, I'm Paul Gift, reminding you to keep doing business as usual.